I should demand a court of inquiry in England.
You mutinous dog.
That's right, how dare you intrude on another episode of the Top 10 Favorite, and from what I believe are the greatest performances by some of the greatest actors in all of cinema.
This time you've come to teach.
Yes, I'm starting from 10 and then ringing bells and then chowing down on capons, all the way up to number 1. And remember your history. I have seen every film attainable of every artist I cover here. That's right, no film left behind. So every list I endure comes from endearing, beautiful, sensational, and yet elegant accuracy.
The ingredients are quite simple, too. Have you a little flour?
Oh, would you, Colonel?
Rather.
Happiest of Pride Months again, my friends, and today, you guessed it, we are talking about an actor that is one of the most beautiful and legendary examples of pride. An actor that honestly has been claimed by so many, even Daniel Day-Lewis himself, as the greatest actor not just of Great Britain, but of all time. The colossal and brilliant Charles Laughton. Born in Scarborough in the north of Yorkshire, England, on this day, my friends, this day of July 1st, 1899, celebrating his 126th birthday from a family of hotel keepers. He was inspired to carry on the family business, but Mr. Baby Laughton was indeed built differently, making such a grand show of the hotel, wanting to showcase the fine state of the hotel, which made the family to believe he was a true showman. However, he came from a very devout Roman Catholic upbringing and went to a Jesuit school, so his passion for showmanship was being challenged. On top of the fact that he served in World War I, serving with a few battalions, but he couldn't hide the fact that he loved to play. He loved to act. So off to RADA, the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts, he went, where Claude Rains was one of his professors, making his first professional appearance in The Government Inspector, which would expand all over the London Heights to The Cherry Orchard, Three Sisters, The Silver Tassie, Payment Deferred, even being the first actor in history to portray the greatest detective in theater, Hercule Poirot, in Agatha Christie's Alibi at the West End in 1928, among countless other great classics on Broadway that were realized and grandiolized by Laughton's fervor and tenacity. It was along this theatrical journey where he met the amazing actress Elsa Lanchester, whom he married in 1929. And like I said, he couldn't hide his love for acting, but he couldn't hide too well his passion for men. Having grown up Catholic, he sadly tried his best to hide it, which in retrospect creates some of the greatest performances an actor could put on stage or on screen, which Laughton would achieve in a mere matter of years in Hollywood. Charles Laughton, my goodness, my friends, has certainly been loved and regarded as the greatest English actor of the golden age of Hollywood, that most English actors themselves prefer the likes of Laughton even more than, say, Sir Laurence Olivier. For Laughton brought a level of heightened reality to every role he played. He never believed in playing it safe for the camera, nor on stage, for he wanted to really bring out the life of every character. The great actor and biographer Simon Callow had put it in his own book of Charles Laughton, The Difficult Actor, that Laughton played and had said so himself that each man is a self-contained universe of pain. And when you see every performance, no matter how over the top, no matter how proclaimedly hammy audiences have said he was, it was entertaining and vibrant. He was so much an artist that even his directing work had received such acclaim, with directing for Broadway a lot of George Bernard Shaw, the K Mutiny Court-Martial with Henry Fonda, and amazingly, his own directorial effort for film. If you cast aside the multiple directorial tasks on The Man on the Eiffel Tower, notably, it is The Night of the Hunter.
Love. You see these fingers, dear hearts? These fingers has veins that run straight to the soul of man. The right hand, friends, the hand of love. Now watch and I'll show you the story of life.
One of the absolute greatest and terrifying films of all time, in my opinion. But an utter box office flop, which stopped Laughton from ever directing a film again. and it was hell to shoot with hot terrain, but Laughton had one of the greatest DPs who worked with Orson Welles on The Magnificent Ambersons, Stanley Cortez, and he had his own brilliant mind using German expressionism to really fill the scenery, making it such a spooky Mother Goose tale. It remains one of the most amazing and saddening single directorial efforts for an artist. For Laughton always brought his best self in every film he did, whether it was directing or acting in front of the camera. And that wasn't the only disappointment in Laughton's filmography, but the unfinished film of I, Claudius, which apparently Laughton was a deep descendant of Claudius, the Roman emperor. Directed by Joseph von Sternberg, it was geared up to be one of the colossal failures in Hollywood. And it was very difficult for Laughton to do, we must say.
Is there anyone else who wishes to call attention to my misfortunes? That's the broadest East End Cockney I've ever heard in my life.
It clearly resulted in the film being shut down completely when co-star Merle Oberon got into a car accident, being the nail in the coffin. But one cannot deny the gargantuan power that Laughton possessed in the art of acting. Needless to say, this top 10 was extremely difficult, my friends. From top to bottom, Charles Laughton was an icon for the ages. So let's bring out those monocles, chow down on some capons maybe, but lend us your ears on the top 10 best performances of one of Great Britain's greatest treasures that will always touch the actors' and audiences' hearts, Charles Laughton. Whew, okay, this was hard. Starting us off at number 10 is the 1935 adaptation of Les Miserables.
I've caught myself. I have committed a crime. What I've always demanded for others, the law, good or bad, but the law to the letter, I now demand for myself.
I make no charge against you.
You must. If you don't, then I must.
Easily, my friends, easily, Laughton gives the best performance and portrayal of the three-dimensional yet obsessively evil Inspector Javert for cinema. Get the hell out of here, Russell Crowe.
Safe behind bars, I will never rest.
Nope, it's all about Laughton. Granted, this is not a musical. That hadn't been adapted yet, not for another 45 years. But when looking at a characterization of the Inspector Javert, who actually receives a first name for this film adaptation, Emile, that's not in the book, among tons of other things, we see Laughton give Javert a depth that he rightfully deserves as a character. Now, this 1935 American adaptation is far from being a faithful representation of the novel. And while Laughton can tend to go hard and mighty in his portrayal, he isn't Snidely frickin' Whiplash, for God's sakes. You ask yourself, how can you humanize a man who is so devoted to his faith and his duty to take down 24601? Jean Valjean. You give him that sincere radical devotion to believe he is doing the right thing by finding him and bringing him to what he knows is justice. And Laughton is just so damn powerful as Javert, even though he doesn't resemble Javert how he is described in the novel, like, at all. But it didn't matter. And when we look into his eyes of his mission, leading to, spoiler, his failure, committing suicide, you truly weep. Number 9. Advise and consent.
I beseech senators to contemplate the spectacle we are making of ourselves. Why?
Quite a controversial entry on all sides, based on the Pulitzer Prize-winning novel by Alan Drury. The film adaptation, directed amazingly by Otto Preminger, takes a better turn, one with an all-star cast that, including, of course, Charles Laughton, in his last performance on film before he passed from his gallbladder cancer just 6 months after the film released. He plays to mountainous effect Senator Sebe Cooley of South Carolina with the thickest southern accent that is incredible to listen to.
I abominate this man, Leffenwell. He is an evil man.
And Senator Cooley works hard to vote against the recent candidate of Secretary of State, Robert Leffingwell, played greatly by Henry Fonda because of the recent dirt dug up about Leffingwell's affiliation with the Communist Party. To help Leffingwell with the investigation is Brig Anderson of Utah. Brigham, get it? Played wonderfully by Don Murray, but we come to find out Anderson has his own certain skeleton in his closet. One of the greatest political dramas, if you ask me, folks, and Laughton commands the villainous charge of the Conservative Party that is just larger than life and yet so grounded in incredible stakes. Laughton worked so hard on Cooley from the inside out that he specifically based his character on Mississippi Senator John C. Stennis, a Democrat who opposed strongly the civil rights movement and supported racial segregation. Figure that one out. But Laughton convinced the zealous senator to record Laughton's lines in a tape recorder so Laughton could really get the feel of the man who is just fighting for what he thinks is right. Laughton received a British Academy Award nomination for Best Foreign Actor, for at this point, Laughton was an American citizen. And my God, it is certainly a powerful last movement in Laughton's symphonic filmography.
He will weaken the moral fiber of our great nation. He will bring destruction to our traditions. And I beg your senators reject him. Reject him.
Number 8, Hobson's Choice.
I'm off.
For most, it is their favorite performance of Mr. Laughton, and it's no wonder to understand why. His performance as the miserly Henry Hobson, owner of Hobson's Boots in Salford, England, is quite beloved, for Charles Laughton is so incredible at balancing the fine line between hammy, ruthless, and lovable. Based on the 1916 play of the same name, funny enough, Charles Laughton played the same role as a teenager, but would come in full triumphant circle, playing the drunken, restrictive father, living with his 3 adult daughters, operating the shoe shop. But his daughters, led by the brilliant Brenda de Bonzi, devised such extravagant schemes to get out under the unrelenting umbrella of Henry Hobson, which drives Henry up the frickin' wall, or down to Moonrakers, where he divulges in the vast amounts of beer with his fair weather buddies. To see a partnership of Charles Laughton and director David Lean is a treasure that creates one of the great shot sequences of Hobson swaggering out of the bar, bumping onto the pole, and capturing the moon in the puddle. It's one of the more iconic images in all of David Lean's and Laughton's filmography that Great Britain and the world cherish, and how valuable in comedy Charles Laughton really was. Number 7, The Barretts of Wimpole Street. Oh, devil. The 1934 film adaptation of one of the great plays by Rudolph Bessier that features Charles Laughton in one of the most savage performances of a father I have ever seen, playing Edward Barrett, the widowed patriarch of the massive Barrett family. The eldest daughter, Elizabeth, played just exquisitely by Norma Shearer, wants to marry Robert Browning, played well by Friedrich March, but Edward's abusive restrictions create such a conflict for not just Elizabeth, but the whole family. Once again, such a restrictive father, Hollywood surely has it out with labeling certain actors as archetypes, I swear. His performance, though, is astoundingly brilliant, and it has stayed with me long after the film has finished, for he gives such a dimension to Edward. You think, why is he so restrictive to his daughters, forbidding them to marry? And then he has that powerfully moving and painful confession of his sexual addiction and how devoted he is to God, that even thinking of sex is such a damned sin that he forbids his daughters for executing such an act. That one begs the mind that he is addicted to having sex with his daughters. Now, subtextually, we all know that it is Charles Laughton fighting with his own urge of wanting men, because growing up in a Catholic family, it has always been such a sin that has hung over his head, which makes his performance the utmost powerful.
You want me to be happy. The only happiness I shall ever know is all yours to give or take. You must look up to me and depend on me and lean on me.
But the specific subtext of the character Edward wanting to have sex with his daughters was indeed strong subtext for Laughton, and MGM wanted to tuck that part away, of course, but Laughton famously said in response, "They couldn't censor the gleam in my eye." And that's why he delivers such a powerful and amazing performance where we, the audience, undoubtedly love to hiss and hate and yet pity his Edward Barrett. Laughton was personally convinced he would be nominated for an Oscar for Best Actor for his performance, to no avail, which disappointed him greatly. But folks, in my opinion, you never need an Oscar to really confirm an amazing performance in a film. Number 6, Rembrandt.
A painter. Painters have a different way of looking at things. You must imagine that I'm looking at you in the same way as the water with which you wash yourself or the air you move in.
A slight biopic on the legendary Dutch Golden Age painter that Laughton was more than eager to sink his hands into, to brush the haunting and subtly beautiful colors of the painter's pain on the silver canvas that is the screen. Laughton was still at the top of his game in cinema and wanted to recreate a certain amount of success he achieved 3 years ago with director Alexander Korda, filming at the brand new production studio Denham Studios in Buckinghamshire, founded by Korda. Laughton and Korda brewed up the idea of Rembrandt's story with the loss of his wife and how the decline of his work came from the tragedy, but the relationship with his maid, played by his dear wife Elsa Lanchester, could possibly save him? Any fan of British cinema, let alone film and Laughton, knows his performance as the suffering painter is one of Laughton's most vulnerable and quietly subtle. It's a small change of pace that isn't too different from Laughton's Toolbox, mind you, but it has more heart attached to it in what is otherwise a very slow and yet mixed film. There was certainly a falling out between Laughton and director Korda because of Korda's devotion to actress Gertrude Lawrence, portraying the other maid/nurse to take care of Rembrandt, who allegedly stole focus, where Laughton was deeply annoyed. In the end, Laughton still walks away with this picture with a performance that many film scholars and actors alike need to study on repressed yet creative pain and yearning freedom.
Vanity of vanities, all is vanity.
Number 5, Ruggles of Red Gap.
Home, America, Red Gap.
Oh, yes, madam. Red Gap.
Oh, blast! How much I absolutely wish this could be much, much higher. As it should, for it has Charles Laughton as the title character, Marmaduke Ruggles. That's right, Marmaduke Ruggles, an English butler to the Earl of Bernstead in the early 20th century, being sold to an American couple over a poker game. So Ruggles has to adapt to his new life in America.
America, my lord. A country of slavery.
Wow, yeah. But comes to find out he may be more free than he expected. This is quintessential for anyone who loves screwball comedy with a heart. And of course, when you're directed by the genius Leo McCarey, you're gonna have one hell of a brilliant film that balances both comedy and drama just equivocally well. Charles Laughton was actually the leader in this whole production, with personally requesting Leo McCarey to direct, as well as helping with the script, turning in honestly the greatest comedic performance of his career. For Laughton was not only prominent in drama, my God, in every performance he gives, there's always an air of comedy. And it comes in full circle within this masterwork. By the time Mr. Laughton gets to the brilliant scene in the bar, you know it, folks, the Gettysburg Address scene. And the way Laughton delivers that address just under his breath and then expands to really inspire the whole room.
And that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth.
Earnestly, one of the most patriotic moments in cinema. Charles Laughton has said he was deeply affected by this scene, and it took him 1.5 days to completely shoot it. And just the speech alone is powerful enough to move any person to tears. There's also a lovely ambiguity of mannerisms in Charles Laughton's performance as Ruggles that is very beautiful to watch for the queer eye, if I do say so myself. But with its massive success, commercially and critically, Charles Laughton would honestly rate Ruggles of Red Gap as his ultimate favorite film he worked on. And it shows with flying rainbow colors. Number 4, Mutiny on the Bounty.
You mutinous dog.
Retract that, sir.
I will repeat it. You're a mutinous dog.
Mr. Creed.
Yes, that's true. Charles Laughton's second Academy Award-nominated performance as the infamous Captain William Bligh, the wickedly salty commander of the HMS Bounty, who is as brutal to his sailors as he is a damn good seaman. But can the crew take it even longer at sea to go rogue and plan a mutiny led by Fletcher Christian, played fantastically by Clark Gable? This Best Picture winner of 1935 is one of the great movies at sea, based on the true story of the real mutiny on the HMS Bounty, which was later written in the book of the same title, and also Men Against the Sea. Laughton was apprehensive on playing the evil captain after Wallace Beery turned it down, mainly because he felt a little intimidated working with the muscular and handsome Clark Gable, which is a coincidence because Gable was actually intimidated and maybe a little uncomfortable working with Laughton, considering it was no real secret of Laughton's homosexuality. Plus, with how classically trained and amazing Laughton was, which only helped the chemistry and tension between Bligh and Christian. Thalberg's plan was going accordingly, and you see the rage that worked so well on screen between these two Oscar winners in brilliant and effective form. Gable was still going nuts with how Laughton apparently never liked looking at Gable in the eye in their scenes, for it was a technique of disconnection. And yeah, I'll admit, it would drive me crazy as an actor. However, you can't argue with what majesty is connecting on screen, clearly. Laughton even went on a crash diet, losing 50 pounds to play the maddening captain, in order to fit in the actual real clothes worn by the real Captain Bligh. That's right, Laughton made it a request himself to wear these clothes for the film, and only increases the dramatic truth to its historical inaccuracies in the narrative. Through all of its pressing and challenging on location and in-studio shoots with hot weather, uncomfortable tension, scary rumors that Laughton was killed in a storm while on location, this was one of the great successes, and one of the great years for Laughton being 1935, the same year as the release of Ruggles of Red Gap and Les Miserables, which were all nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars. Laughton would claim his portrayal, though inaccurate to the real Captain Bligh, was one of his favorites, and is in my opinion the best Captain Bligh we've had on screen. And we've had a bunch of great Captain Blighs like Trevor Howard and Anthony Hopkins, but Charles Laughton still brought the Shakespeare to the sea for this one.
I'll live to see you, all of you, hanging from the highest yard arm in the British fleet.
Number 3, witness for the prosecution.
And now today you've told us a new story entirely. The question is, Frau Helm, were you lying then? Are you lying now? Or are you not in fact a chronic and habitual liar?
Hell yes, we all love a good courtroom drama, sprinkled with some comedy. Thanks, of course, to the brilliant co-writing and directing by Billy Wilder, but the magnificent lead performance of Charles Laughton as the Queen's senior counsel, Wilfred Robarts, whom, after just leaving the hospital from a severe heart attack, is appointed to defend Leonard Vole, played by Tyrone Power, in a murder trial. But Vole's wife, Marlene Dietrich, isn't helping one iota. My goodness, how I wish, again, I could put this much, much higher for how much I freaking love Laughton's curmudgeonness here. And as you would guess, the chemistry again between he and Elsa as his clingy private nurse is the best work they've done together as a couple, personally.
I almost married a lawyer once. I was in attendance when he had his appendectomy, and we became engaged as soon as he could sit up. And then peritonitis set in, and he went like that.
He certainly was a lucky lawyer.
Laughton is very much accurately in the beautiful vein of Agatha Christie, working his monocle that he fashioned his character after Florence Guadella, Laughton's very own lawyer, who would twirl his monocle just the same. Now, it was a bit difficult acting alongside Tyrone Power for Laughton, for it had been rumored by many, including Elsa herself, that Laughton was in love with Tyrone. And that love wasn't reciprocated, shall we say. However, it creates such great masterful work from both involved in the film.
Well, nothing big.
Most of all, Laughton, who delivers the most grounded classic realism of an anointed lawyer you would ever experience. And of all cases, Laughton was the most gracious on set while making this film. I mean, it's common knowledge that Laughton gained the reputation of being absolutely difficult on film sets, being the utter perfectionist. But honestly, within the context of this set, he gave the most to his fellow actors, reading lines off camera, staying late, helping in every which way he could, becoming such a dream to work with, said Billy Wilder. Laughton deservedly earned his 3rd Academy Award nomination for Best Actor and earned the great compliment that he led one of 2 films based on Agatha Christie's stories that Christie herself loved the most.
I suspected something, but not that. Never that.
Number 2, The Private Life of Henry VIII.
Would you consent to a divorce?
I would consent to a divorce.
You're a very reasonable woman. What are your terms?
2 manors.
Granted.
Richmond and Bletchingley with properties.
Granted.
4,000 crowns a year.
Granted.
One of your gentlemen is master of my household.
Take whom you want.
Pennell.
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 Granted.
Once again, these top 5 were egregiously difficult, but Charles Laughton's only Academy Award-winning performance for Best Actor as the colossal, buffoonish King Henry VIII is one of the most legendary, for it features Laughton ruling the scenery with gusto and might that even though Laughton did not have to go crazy hard as making you believe he was the king, he made you believe in how fun it was for him to be the king. It has been refuted by historians for decades and how inaccurate Laughton's performances as Henry VIII, how more well-mannered King Henry was, not throwing cape and legs everywhere, or even dining in the halls for that matter, how discreet and prudish he was about sexual encountering with his 6 wives, etc. So yes, we have a classic case of dramatic liberties being taken by London Films, founded by Alexander Korda, who also directed this film. But you know what? When it comes to royal history, there's nothing more fun than creating fun satire on historical catastrophes that was Henry VIII's love life, which this film focuses on. And Charles Laughton drives it with some of the greatest comedy you could find. Every scene he has with each wife is priceless, including dear Elsa as his 4th wife, Anne of Cleves, who once again almost steals the picture, but their chemistry is just on fire in this picture, where you can see through the narrative how much they hated each other, but really how much they loved each other. Through all of Laughton's brilliant comedic timing, he earns the deeply, powerfully dramatic scenes, like when he finally finds his perfect wife, Catherine, but is actually cheating on him with Thomas Culpeper, the scene where she is being executed for adultery, how he pleads to the heavens.
Catherine! Catherine.
Oh, it's so sad. For Laughton is making us feel for him so truthfully there. Laughton's portrayal would inspire a number of future interpretations, like Robert Shaw and Richard Burton in their own Oscar-nominated performances. But nothing touches Laughton's towering commitment to such a character that he would portray again 20 years later in Young Bess. He became the 2nd British actor to win an Academy Award for Best Actor and paved his way to stardom from here on out, representing true royalty himself.
6 wives. And the best of them's the worst.
And now, my friends, here are some honorable mentions for you. The Beachcomber, one of the 3 films produced by Laughton's production company, Mayflower Pictures, which was originally known as Vessel of Wrath, after the W. Somerset Maugham short story, features another one of the 7 collaborations between beloved husband and wife, Laughton and Lanchester, in National Board of Review award-winning performances, with Laughton as the drunken womanizing beachcomber, on the run from the mob, and Lanchester willing to help rehabilitate him from the inside out. It's a charming little picture, for it's always such a delight to see these 2 together and work so wonderfully off of each other. The Big Clock, a film noir that is Far, far from being a real film noir, honestly. It's arguably more so in the vein of screwball comedy than anything with its dialogue and execution. Case in point, Charles Laughton's performance, which is quite subdued but hysterically brilliant. Of course, he plays the villain against Ray Milland's wrongfully accused editor-in-chief, taking the rap for Laughton, who murders his mistress in a sadistic way. Again, features another reunion of Laughton and Lanchester, but Laughton certainly sticks out. The Suspect, which this is an underrated film noir, featuring Laughton as a middle-aged manager, Philip Marshall, in early 20th century London, growing in an obsession with his young stenographer, played by Ella Raines. Such a sexual obsession that his wife is really getting in the way. Totally in the vein of The Woman in the Window, Scarlet Street, etc., but Laughton delivers a heart to the role of a man who only yearned for a second chance. Spartacus, which... yeah, it's a challenging treat to include, but it deserves its place as an honorable mention, for it is one of the greatest troubled productions in cinema, which I honestly still like. The final product. Charles Laughton's grandeur performance is perfect for a film like this, as a foible of mankind, and all the scenes he has with Oscar winner Peter Ustinov are delicious. Makes all the sense in the world, since they rewrote practically all their dialogue together and even directed the lot of their scenes. The legends are famous with Laughton and Sir Laurence Olivier apparently not getting along whilst filming, and it's honestly a result of both actors trying to stay relevant in a big Roman epic like this. The main takeaway for most is how difficult Charles Laughton was during filming, with huffing and puffing, with threatening to sue producer and actor Kirk Douglas for trimming his role down, and honestly, you can't blame Laughton for being upset. However, no lawsuits came to fruition, so by all means, Charles used that passive-aggressive energy for Gracchus, and used it he did. Devil in the Deep, which is honestly one of the great big breakouts on screen for an actor ever. That being, of course, for Charles Laughton as the, you guessed it, villainous naval commander Sturm, who grows in wicked jealousy of his sexually frustrated wife, played by Tallulah Bankhead. Epic. And she hops from one officer to the next, from Cary Grant, whoa, to then Gary Cooper, bigger whoa. Charles Laughton steals the show from every single party here, even earning a big introducing credit in the opening credits, which Laughton was being groomed to becoming one of the great stars in Hollywood with his overpowering performance. Once again, his maddening commander has an underlying campiness to him that is so funny, and it's astounding how he can snap into true terror just like that. Number 1, The Hunchback of Notre Dame.
I never realized till now how ugly I am. It's because you're so beautiful. I'm not a man. I'm not a beast.
Yes, folks, I could not deny it. For Charles Laughton's performance as the Hunchback himself, Quasimodo is one of the most beautiful realizations of classic literature in the flesh. And it hits hard for me personally with the character of Quasimodo being deaf. I'm very grateful, at least this film tried to open up with sign language.
I'm deaf, you know. But you can speak to me by signs.
Why did you save me?
Classic film lovers, you know Charles Laughton's breathtaking performance as the bell ringer of the mesmerizing church, who falls in love with the persecuted gypsy Esmeralda, played of course by Maureen O'Hara, is the greatest performance of the literary character ever put on camera. And there have been great portrayals with Anthony Quinn, Anthony Hopkins, even the American originator Lon Chaney. But Laughton tops them all with the true heart and soul of such a tragic figure. Many great artists were in the running to play it for RKO. Oh, the list is long, with Lon Chaney Jr. wanting to follow his daddy's footsteps, Orson Welles, Bela Lugosi, Boris Karloff, Peter Lorre, Paul Muni, Claude Rains, you name them again. But Laughton was still riding high in respect, even if the film he made with Alfred Hitchcock, Jamaica Inn, that same year, didn't do too well. But after that film, he brought over Maureen, making her American debut with Esmeralda. And that's also the beauty of Charles Laughton. He still saw the greatness in other actors. Laughton sure felt the pressure of bringing real human weight to the role of Quasimodo, spending 2.5 hours every morning in makeup, clashing horribly with a makeup designer, Perk Westmore, to get the deformity correct for this particular role, wearing a milky contact lens, his hump stuffed with 4 pounds of foam rubber, and wearing a rubber suit to give the muscles of bell ringing. The final design is marvelous. Yes, you can argue Laughton's performance is all makeup, but my friends, you know real acting. You know it's all about what's behind the makeup that takes control. And having to act in all this during one of the hottest summers, sleeping in wet, cold sheets, which would evaporate like that. Laughton fillets himself open through a time where, while this was being made, World War II officially went into action. So Laughton, in an act of patriotism, rang the bells himself for a long period of time, communicating of how his heart went out to the whole world for engaging in war. On top of reciting the Gettysburg Address for the cast and crew to keep their spirits up, of course. The film only received 2 Oscar nominations and no nomination for Laughton, which is a giant shame, considering that, honestly, there really is not enough of Laughton in this picture. There are many actors who have stated that they wanted to become an actor because of Laughton's specific performance as the tragic Hunchback. Every time you hear his very last line,
"Why was I not made of stone like thee?"
oh, it melts your heart. It's more tragic and painful since Charles Laughton actually felt that way about himself, ever so critical of his appearance, his weight, believing in himself that he wasn't such a leading man, which is why he took the role of Quasimodo so damn seriously. Also because of how sincerely damned he felt for envisioning homosexual activity, being homosexual, and engaging in homosexual activity in secret isolation. As Elsa had retold it, Charles had apparently been blackmailed at one point. As he, on the rise of being a well-noted stage actor at the West End, he was blackmailed by a boy he had sex with, which put Elsa at the greatest shock, knowing he was gay. However, it's so beautiful to know how she still supported and loved him just the same, for she needed her Charles to ground her, becoming the great British Will and Grace of that time.
You're the nicest girl I ever married.
The legacy that Charles Laughton left behind is absolutely enormous and special, for even in his troubling time of work, he had many readings of great classical works on radio and on tour to keep the language alive, having taught the great Albert Finney in character work, among many others. He never came out publicly, but held the strength of his pride close to his heart. And that's the true beauty of Charles Laughton. Though he never thought he looked as such, he was beautiful. My God, he was beautiful. For who else could bring out such beauty in many of the characters that he had given life to so brilliantly well?
Just roll up your mouth. You talk too much.
All right already, but tell me, my friends, first, do you agree with my picks? What are your favorite performances by the iconic and amazing Charles Laughton? Please share as much as possible in the comments. If you like this, please click like, subscribe to the channel, please, and stay tuned for many more top 10s to come your magical way. Thank you all so very much for watching and supporting. And yes, my friends, always remember, keep your pride and also keep the classics alive.